Greetings, welcome to Decker Games YouTube video game history thing. When we think of Nintendo, we immediately think of games like the thick mustache plumber, the Kong that somehow is named Donkey, and the Link that a lot of people like to call Zelda. But there is more to Nintendo than meets the eye. Being a Sega fanboy, I have no shame in admitting it. For me, Nintendo was always associated with games for children. In fact, that was Nintendo's original business, designing children's toys. Maybe this is why they have such restricting rules on violence, nudity, language and whatnot. Nevertheless, this idea of mine would change with time. Founded in 1889 Kyoto, Japan, by Fusashiro Yamauchi, we're talking 19th century here, Nintendo started their business by producing playing cards. Yes, old-fashioned playing cards, but since this isn't a Nintendo history video, let's fast forward to 1965. Boosted by the success of the playing card business and changing its name from Nintendo Playing Card Corporation to Nintendo 2 years prior, the company starts to make a move into the toy industry. In that same year, and with that goal in mind, Nintendo hires Gunpei Yokoi as a maintenance engineer for its assembly lines. The change would occur only 1 year after. In 1966, Nintendo enters the competitive toy industry. The competition was fierce with other companies already established in that market. After years of struggling to stay alive within the industry, Fusashiro Yamauchi noticed the ability that Yokoi had on creating electronic toys instead of regular ones. This was natural. Yokoi had a background in engineering, and creating electronic toys was not only a no-brainer for him, but also fun. The company then moves to electronic toys that were much more appealing than regular ones, with sales and profits margins rising. Again, boosted by another success, in 1972, Nintendo enters the video game industry where it still stands until today. Yokoi was responsible for things like the Game & Watch, the eternal Game Boy, and the not-so-memorable Virtual Boy. Well, you win some, you lose some. We all know the story from here. Nintendo's dominance over the Japanese and North American markets are well known. While development teams within Nintendo were working on sequels to previous successes, the team R&D1, led by Yokoi, was in charge of creating new IPs. Yokoi wanted to make something different, and inspired by other Nintendo titles and Ridley Scott's Alien, a new title named Metroid was born. A non-linear shooter with platform elements and with a more dark tone to it. The game would come to be well received both by the critic and the players, despite sales not being that great. While not being groundbreaking, the game has one of the biggest surprises at the end. Samus Aran, the main protagonist, is a woman. Making the main protagonist a female was a bold move back in the day. Even Zelda, that is called Zelda, has a guy as a main protagonist. Go figure. It was a bold move indeed, and one that I approve. Of course, that being heavily inspired by the movie Alien, things make a lot more sense nowadays. Nevertheless, the dominance that Nintendo had in the two biggest markets, the story in the rest of the world was very different. Near the end of the 8-bit era, Sega went all out trying to take Nintendo off the throne and reaching the market first, but that is a different video altogether, which you can watch here on the channel. Despite who won the bit wars, Nintendo had that for children branding, especially with Sega targeting a more adult audience. With me, it was no different. Well, no different until 1994, that is. I cannot pinpoint the day, but it was close to Christmas. I was shopping with my parents, and we were at an old computers, games and all sorts of tech store. I heard the sound from a video game. I couldn't see from far. It was on an old good CRT television, and the glare would prevent me to see the image at a distance. As we got closer, the sound became more clear and transformed into music, but it was dark, adult, serious, and deep. I saw Super Metroid for the Super Nintendo. The development of the game began in 1991. Nintendo wanted to make a sequel to the first and second games. Yes, there is a second game, Metroid 2, for the Game Boy. That, while not being a great of a game, it is very important in understanding the Metroid plot. The task was overseen by Gunpei Yokoi once again. He was accompanied by Yoshio Sakamoto, Makoto Kano, Hiroshi Yamauchi, and composer Kenji Yamamoto. The first year of development was solely to get to know the hardware, and the goal was to produce a game that could be compared to a movie. To understand the ambience that would drive the game, Sakamoto created a video on VHS to deliver the feeling he had in mind for the title screen, which portrays a Metroid baby in its tank and dead scientists on the floor. One thing that is clearly distinct in Super Metroid, and which Sakamoto was very demanding, are the noises produced by the Metroid baby that should be able to transmit emotions. The opening in Super Metroid is epic, showing the supposed last Metroid that Samus spared at the end of Metroid 2, while taking it with her, imprisoned in a container, surrounded by dead scientists while the dark music plays in the background and the baby makes noises. It gives a sense of disturbance, fear, and adrenaline, just like a movie. In March of 1994, Super Metroid is released for the Super Famicom, followed by the Super Nintendo in North America and Europe in the same year.
The last Metroid is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace.
The plot starts off right at the end of Metroid 2. After Samus saves the infant Metroid, she brings it to the Ceres space colony for studying. While studying the poor creature, they found out that it can be used for the benefit of mankind. But of course that with every sci-fi experiment, stuff is bound to go wrong. A distress signal from Ceres is detected, and Samus returns only to find dead scientists and a missing baby Metroid. Ridley is in possession of the capsule, defeats Samus, and escapes the station, taking the baby Metroid. Well, I'm not going to spoil the story for you. Let's just say that Samus pursues Ridley, and a new journey to save mankind begins. And what a journey it is. Super Metroid's gameplay is very similar to previous entries. It is a non-linear shooter with platform elements, which takes place on a huge, open-ended planet Zebes. The planet is an absolute maze, and the player progresses by finding power-ups and abilities that grant access to new areas. One major thing that favors the player is the introduction of a map. Yes, a map. This is a huge help on navigating a maze-like world. The game also introduced new abilities like combining weapons and Samus' customizable armored suit that allows the player to enable or disable abilities at will. Using the aforementioned powers and abilities, the player navigates through different areas, from the previous mentioned Ceres space colony, Crateria or the surface of planet Zebes, Brinstar, which is a jungle-like area, Norfair, which lies deep below the surface of the planet, a wrecked ship, Meridia, the ocean world of Zebes, and Torian, the space pirates control center where Mother Brain is hiding. Of course, this is no walk in the park. During this voyage through planet Zebes, the player will face an assortment of foes that want to put a stop to Samus' efforts. Along with your regular enemies throughout the different zones, there are many bosses to be fought. like the Kraid and Ridley that make a comeback from the original NES game. Dragon, a sea creature, Spore Spawn, which is a native of the jungle zone, and Mother Brain, again from the original game, among many others. But not all inhabitants of Planet Zebes are foes. The player also encounters some friendly creatures like the Atacoons, a trio of monkey-like creatures with 4 arms. Dakora, an alien green creature, Tattering, which is a turtle-like creature, and a very special friend that will remain unmentioned. Finding these allies is not a simple encounter. They will teach Samus some very important techniques and abilities that are essential to advance in the game. After the game launched back in 1994, Super Metroid received very good reviews and acceptance by the industry and gamers. The game remains until this day one of the most popular and critically acclaimed games of all time. Along with the Castlevania franchise, it spawned an all-new genre called Metroidvania and influenced numerous game producers for years to come. As I've stated in previous videos, Super Metroid and SimCity were the only reasons I ever wanted a Super Nintendo in the first place. Why? What makes Super Metroid such a great game? Well, for me it is a combination of 5 factors. 1. Graphics. 2. Sound. 3. Gameplay. 4. The plot. And 5. Atmosphere. The game has beautiful sprites, with detailed characters and backgrounds, making an awesome use of shadows, giving it that sci-fi look. The sound, well, it is a masterpiece. Kenji Yamamoto composed some dark-toned and serious music that gives me a feeling of unsettlement, fear, and at the same time, the need to explore. Gameplay is spot on. A 2D action game with platform elements. The game invites the player to explore, but that comes with numerous challenges to overcome. Ranging from extensive platform challenges, to finding abilities that allow the player to progress, to fight some giant bosses. Although the map has an entry and an exit, let's call it that, the player is free to explore, and backtracking to previous zones that were blocked is the name of the game. The plot is straight out of a sci-fi movie. Yes, Ridley Scott's Alien plays a big part in this. A female protagonist, an alien menace, an experiment going wrong, and mankind existence at stake. Although pretty straightforward, the plot has some twists like Samus sparing the life of baby Metroid at the end of the second game, and others that will not be revealed in this video. Finally, the atmosphere. This is the result of the previous 4. The symbiosis between all these results in a never-seen atmosphere in a video game. It's a serious, dark-toned game with deep music and sound effects. It really creates the feeling of being in an alien planet, exploring the unknown, with danger lurking in every corner, a feeling of solitude and fear. And yet, it consumes the player, fully immersing you in the Samus role. So 25 years later, is Super Metroid still worth it? This shouldn't be a question really. Of course it is. Super Metroid remains one of the very best games of all time. It is eternal, timeless, and inspired and spawned numerous game developers and video games throughout the years. It remains until today my favorite game on the Super Nintendo. If you've never played Super Metroid before, you should do it right now, either by procuring an old school cartridge, or by playing it on the Wii U or the 3DS, or even on the Super Nintendo Classic, since it's one of the 25 games on the system. If you want to play it, there's really no excuse not to. And if you like histories and reviews of classic video games, you can check out my other videos because I'm sure you will find more stuff that you can enjoy. You can also follow me on social media for some media that apparently is social. Leave a like in this video and consider subscribing to the channel. As always, thank you very much for watching this, and until my next video, take care.